hardest thing is to come back after 3 months of not doing any work, not doing any homework, and all of a sudden, you've got a lot to make up. Everybody has a lot to catch up from what the end of the last year.
So don't take it from us, just take it from him. So it's back to reality for President Biden, the commander-in-chief relating with some students heading back to school as he himself confronts the harsh reality of working after a vacation-filled summer. Biden is facing a slew of problems in the country and a long road ahead for his 2024 campaign. And it probably doesn't help that Bernie Sanders is throwing some serious shade at his record in New Hampshire, pointing out how Americans are suffering under his presidency.
The president has a right to be very proud of many of the accomplishments that we've achieved in the last 3 years. But the reality is that today, 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. Our healthcare system is a total disaster. 85 million people uninsured, underinsured, while the insurance companies make huge profits. The cost of pharmaceutical drugs, prescription drugs, sky high.
Bernie not stopping there. The socialist senator wading into the issue over Biden's advanced age. And Republican candidate Nikki Haley is warning that a vote for Biden is a vote for Kamala.
I met with the president, 5 or 6 weeks ago. We had a great discussion. He seemed fine to me. But I think at the end of the day, what we have got to ask ourselves is, what do people stand for? So age is an issue, Chuck, but there are a lot of broader issues than just that.
We cannot have Kamala Harris as president. We can't chance this. We have to make sure we win this, because the thought of Kamala Harris being president should send a chill up every American spine.
This, as a new poll reveals, a wide majority of Americans view Biden as too old for office. 77% of people, actually. So, Harold, is Bernie the answer to Biden's problems up in New Hampshire? They wanted him to go up there and help him out?
He maybe is. It's good to be back around the table. Hope everybody had a good weekend. Neat. A couple of things I'd say about this. Spoiler alert. We've had income inequality for a long time in the country. And unfortunately, an overwhelming majority of Americans have been living paycheck to paycheck now for a generation. In fact, most Americans cannot withstand a $500 jolt, interruption, emergency to their family budgets, as we all know. Now, this is not to let anybody off the hook. Presidential races at their best are when both sides, or even in a primary, people give specifics, ideas, a vision about how they're going to solve these problems, how we're going to go about dealing with them. I don't miss Bernie Sanders' voice on the national stage, admittedly. However, I do miss his energy. And for him to say to President Biden, to remind him, as you go into an election season, you can't rest on your laurels. We have invested in building things here in America. We have invested in trying to de-risk us from China. But if we don't deal with what Oliver Anthony deals with in that song, if we don't speak to the fact that everyday Americans are concerned and worried about their children, their neighborhoods, their communities, their families' futures, their own livelihood at work, then we're not being honest about what presidential races are about. So if I were President Biden, I'd listen to Senator Sanders, take him at his word, and begin to develop specifics about how you're going to make America stronger and help us get along better over the next 4 years.
Judge, I don't even know if you could get 77% of Americans to agree on a Mother's Day resolution. And yet, you can get 77% of Americans to say, and I don't think they're saying it in a way that is supposed to be mean towards Joe Biden, but that they are concerned. They said he is, at this age, he'll be the oldest president if he were to win re-election. He'd be 86 at the end of a second term. And they're saying this is just too old. I don't know how the White House spins that.
Well, I think that they're not worried about it because they believe that people hate Donald Trump so much, and it appears that he's going to be the Republican candidate, the Republican nominee, based upon what we've seen so far, that they're willing to put him up because they believe that he can beat Donald Trump. It's as simple as that. They hate him, Donald Trump, more than they love the country. And let me say something interesting. I thought the way he answered the question, about Joe Biden, he said he seemed fine to me.
Right.
So he wasn't discrediting the people who questioned his acuity. And the interesting thing is Bernie Sanders is 81. Mm-hmm. And you look at Bernie Sanders, you listen to him, he's got his stuff together. Yeah. Joe Biden is not about age. He's about mental acuity. Joe Biden is about a guy who's got some real problems walking and tripping and not knowing where he is. But the interesting part of this also is when he said the hardest thing to do is to come back after 3 months to the kids on the first day of school, not having done any work. I mean, I don't know if he feels the same way. I think he's speaking from personal experience. He seems to have been on vacation for the whole summer at the beach house. And I just want to say one thing. The paycheck to paycheck thing, 70% of people in urban areas are living paycheck to paycheck. Most of the large urban areas are Democrat areas. So you know that they're concerned about it more than the average, who apparently it's 60%. So they're not worried about that. They just hate Donald Trump.
Do you think, Jesse, that Bernie sees Gavin Newsom out there and thinks, don't count me out?
No, he was just invited to speak at this college in New Hampshire and said yes. I don't see any behind-the-scenes jockeying. I can't believe that student was so embarrassed to be seen with President Biden that she asked us to pixelate her face. That should tell you everything you need to know about the president's popularity. We have been living paycheck to paycheck forever. The whole country has. The whole world lives paycheck to paycheck. I was living paycheck to paycheck well into my 30s. It's not the government's fault people are living paycheck to paycheck. This country's run on consumer spending and debt, credit card debt, mortgage debt, spend. We don't save, we don't invest. We're purposely not taught to save and invest. I wasn't taught to save and invest till a couple years ago. They don't want us saving, investing. They don't. They want us spending and putting it on the plastic. So Bernie, to say that the government is going to get us out of this paycheck to paycheck, that's impossible. Bernie should start speaking directly to the American people. And to say that, oh, my God, these insurance companies are making so much money. Why doesn't Bernie go after big food and big tech? Everybody's fat and sick because they're staring at screens and eating toxic stuff. Why doesn't he never talk about that? It's not the insurance companies. He said something interesting, and I think it should be a warning to the Republican Party. He said progressives aren't challenging Joe Biden because Donald Trump is such a threat, the party has to be united. Joe Biden's a threat. So Republicans, they need to get together. Now, Trump Republicans shouldn't be trying to purge other Republicans out of the party, and vice versa. This Republican Party needs to grow. It needs to go peel off Democrats. It needs to bring out new voters. It needs to get some independents. It needs to build and expand the party. You need to win this thing in a landslide. And you're only going to win it in a landslide unless the party grows.
You sound like a different Jesse there.
Yeah, what's going on, Jesse?
Your mother's going to be very mad at you.
Why?
Yeah.
She taught you to say.
Exactly. I want to see the mom text.
No, she didn't.
I want to see the mom text before the end of the block. And I'll give you a chance to talk about anything you want, but we haven't touched on the idea of the Republicans running against Kamala Harris. And I wonder about that strategy.
Well, I think that might be part of the reason that we don't see her that often, because it's actually hard enough to run against Joe and, like you said, to challenge Joe because of his weakness, right? It's hard to be that weak that it's also almost kind of a strength, because some of the stuff that he talks about, Judge, like you pointed out, it's not really an age thing. I mean, I saw Paul McCartney in concert, who's older than Joe Biden, 3-hour show. He's singing, he's playing all these instruments. Martha Stewart, also older than Joe Biden. But how do you challenge a guy who just gets up there and he's babbling about, you know, I was raised by Puerto Ricans, or shaking hands with the air, or calling out for dead people? It's a lot harder to challenge someone on substantive policy issues when you can't really put him in front of a group of people and start to feel like, wait, where am I? Where it can become confusing to you. So it is difficult to challenge him. And then it's difficult also to challenge Kamala, because what will we challenge her on? She never goes out, she never says anything, she never does anything. They don't do any interviews. So there's nothing substantive to argue against, because they don't really give people that opportunity, which they should. I mean, we should have access to that, absolutely.
We should, and then even this week, he just ignored questions as they were shouted at him.
Of course.
We'll see if that changes.
But we expect that, right? We're just like, oh, that's just Joe being Joe, which is crazy. If I sat here and I started babbling on and on, I wouldn't make it to the next commercial. They would haul me out of here.
Well, we would prevent that from happening. You would not get hauled out of here. All right, coming up, bare-knuckle fistfights breaking out in a Democratic city over Biden's border crisis.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.